Well, with Zack Snyder's Justice League coming out this Thursday, I thought it was about time that we revisit Justice League, which came out a few years ago, to just talk about what went wrong with that movie, because I am a big Superman fan. As you can see, Sean is here with me, and we're both wearing the same Superman shirt. Actually, now that I look at it, it might be a little bit different. I'm not sure. Maybe they're the same, maybe it's just how it fits us. I don't know. But I'm a big Superman fan, and I remember really looking forward to Justice League. Whenever it came out in theaters, I was pretty excited about it, and I was caught up in the moment, and I actually really enjoyed the movie. And then I left the theaters, thought about it for 5 minutes, and realized I hated the movie.
That's all it took.
And, yeah, it just took me a little bit of thinking about it, because I was hyped because Superman's in it. But then the more I thought about it, the more I just disliked it. And now, as years have passed, I've disliked it more and more, and I can honestly say I watched Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman multiple times. Justice League, I think this was genuinely my second time watching it all the way through, because I really had no desire to rewatch this movie. But I did it for y'all, because I wanted to think about what went wrong here so that we could compare it to Zack Snyder's Justice League when it comes out. That being said, before we actually get to our review, Sean, what is your relationship to superhero movies?
Well, I haven't seen very many of them. In fact, the only ones I've seen from beginning to end are Infinity War, Endgame, and Black Panther, so all Marvel movies.
Yeah. Cool. So basically, when we're going into this review, I'm going to have more I can say about the movie just because I have more to compare it to, right? So a lot of the stuff I'm asking Sean about, it's literally just going to be his takeaways from the movie in and of itself. So we might have some differing opinions. I don't know about that. But that being said, let's not waste any time because I'm hoping this will be a little bit of a shorter video than our normal videos. And so let's just talk about Justice League. We call it Justice League because Joss Whedon came in and, he kind of did a lot of reshoots and stuff. So there's Justice League and then Zack Snyder's Justice League, also known as the Snyder Cut, right? Hashtag release the Snyder Cut. And then I think nowadays the new hashtag is hashtag restore the Snyderverse, because people are like, let's bring that back and let's just go forward with that. But yeah, so Justice League, like I said, it was mainly a result of Joss Whedon being hired to come in and do some massive reshoots. And that's the first thing I wanted to address, because whenever you're watching this movie, it's very evident that certain scenes, they're just spliced to where the lighting is different, the characters look different, especially Ben Affleck, because, to play these heroes, these are gods among men, right? These people, they're chiseled to the core, they're in the best shape possible. But you can't really sustain that shape for a very long time. And so whenever they filmed the movie originally, you can tell, just Ben Affleck, his face is chiseled, and you can tell this guy's got no fat on him.
Yeah.
But then, months have passed, they get called back for reshoots, he's not in bad shape, but whenever you're watching the show, you can clearly see, in between shots, you have this, chiseled face with, his hair is, little more well done and everything, and then it just cuts to him and, his face is more flushed, there's got a little bit more weight to it, and it's just odd to me. How did you feel about all that stuff whenever you were watching it?
I didn't notice it as much as you did, but whenever you pointed it out, I definitely noticed it.
Yeah, I felt bad.
Even the hair was different.
Yeah. I felt kind of bad watching it. I probably should have held my opinions back so Sean could have formed his own opinions about the movie, free from my own. But I couldn't help but just roast the movie the whole way through because, to be fair, originally I was just going to do this review alone, but Sean had some fun stuff to say during the movie. I was like, Sean, you should do this with me. But it was just whenever I'm watching it, I'm it's so frustrating because the shots that I really liked were the ones that were very evidently Zack Snyder shots. And you can tell because the lighting is different. They're more theatrical and more epic. They look more like paintings. That's why I say that they look a lot more like Renaissance paintings, where there's heavy shading, and basically you could just screenshot the screen and you could put it on a canvas and it would look really, really good.
Yeah.
And you can tell that's a Zack Snyder shot. Whereas the Joss Whedon ones, they just look like they were plucked out of a Marvel movie and thrown in there. And so that's the biggest issue with this movie to me, is that it doesn't feel like one movie. It feels like two movies stitched together. And so it's more like Frankenstein's monster than it is like an actual superhero movie.
Yeah, half of it feels like a Marvel movie with DC characters.
Yeah, and that's a good transition because the next thing I wanted to talk about was the mixed tone of the movie. Because of these reshoots, the movie has all these crazy different tones where some of it, you see it approaching those deeper themes of Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman and stuff, but then it just cuts to these gags that just feels like a Marvel movie, the Flash is just cracking jokes in the climax of the whole movie, and the world is at stake here, but he's just making a joke about this stuff.
I'm so quirky.
Yeah, and it's this is ridiculous, but there's this big like this jumbled mass of mixed emotions that I have about this, because some of it you're like, okay, you can see the shreds of what was there, but then it just cuts to the classic Marvel stuff. And Brianne and I, we recently watched all the Marvel movies, and I don't have anything against the Marvel movies in and of themselves. I will say that over time I did get fatigued by the constant lack of stakes, because it just always people are cracking jokes all the time. And to me, it took away from the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, you could watch that movie and it didn't really feel like the world was actually at stake.
Yeah.
Except it's like they had to tell you the world was at stake.
Yeah, you could totally forget. We even talked about this, and we'll address this a little bit later, but it literally, I felt bored in the final scene. I'm like, I don't feel like the world's about to end, but you could tell that's where they were heading. And so that's where, going into the Snyder Cut, I'm really looking forward to see how they do that, because Zack Snyder's pretty good about making you feel the weight of a situation.
Yeah.
And he really blows up the proportion a lot.
I think they tried to do that with that family.
Yes.
That they kind of threw out.
The Russian family. That was ridiculous. But bring that up, because you're really good at these transitions here. Because the next thing I wanted to talk about was the pacing. And really, if you want to just talk about how the pacing is all off, you got to talk about the Russian family, because they are the perfect example of how the pacing of this movie is totally weird and wonky. Because you have them in the Justice League, they've come in, they're in this climactic fight against Steppenwolf and the Parademons and all this stuff, and then you just keep cutting away to this Russian family just trying to get away. And you can tell it's one of those things that they've done this in a few Marvel movies. In a few movies, they do have it to where they have some family or something you're following, just to realize, oh, there's people being affected by this. This is how it's affecting the everyday person. But in this movie, it just doesn't work. It just cuts off all the tension, and you're just watching this family, and then you feel bad because you're like, man, I don't even know if I want the parents to survive, because they threw their kids in the back of the truck. I'm like, you know what? Save the kids, leave the parents. What the heck are you doing?
They hit a bump and those kids are flying.
Yeah, it's they're like, oh, sorry kids, y'all could go get eaten by the parademons, but we're gonna leave. And the Russian family thing, it throws off the whole. I mean, they're not the thing that throws off the whole movie. The movie itself throws off the whole movie. But they're an example of that, and that is a result of the reshoots, right? Those things weren't originally there, and I'm assuming he just inserted those in there just to make it feel like there was more weight, but it didn't accomplish that. Instead, I was just like, you condensed this down to a 2-hour movie, and you spent this much time on these people? Because another thing you brought up is that it felt very rushed.
Yeah.
Because you're like, man, all these things are happening. And then the movie just it hits the climax, and you're like, wow, we're already here. And then it just rushes through it, and then it keeps cutting to this family, and you're like, really? You made a 2-hour movie here, and you're going to spend so much time on this Russian family nobody cares about, where you could have used that time to flesh out the characters at the beginning, to flesh out the storyline, to raise the stakes, but instead you're focusing on this family I don't care about.
Yeah, they had no... Well, I guess the villain wasn't the villain in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
But on top of that, it didn't feel like he had any trouble actually getting the cubes, because the first two he walked in and grabbed, and then the third one he literally walked and grabbed because they were too busy
They literally
fighting Superman.
It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, well, no, it almost seems like an afterthought. Literally, they're fighting Superman, and then they turn, and you see this beam, and Wonder Woman's like, oh no, the mother box. And you're like, yeah. That, that was the third mother box. That was the last one he needed.
Yeah.
He can now start terraforming the planet.
They didn't do that in Infinity War with the last Infinity Stone.
Yeah, well, I mean, they built up the stakes a little bit more, right? To where literally he's having to come in, Wanda kills Vision, and then he brings him back, and so there was more tension there.
But even then, that was also very rushed.
It was.
It was he had all 6 stones, and before the movie was over.
Yeah, we were talking about this. Whenever I first watched the movie Infinity War, I knew it was going to be a 2-parter. And I didn't know what was going to happen at the end of that movie, so I assumed both movies were going to involve him getting the Infinity Stones, and then it was going to climax at the end. Yeah. And then I remember watching Infinity War, I was like, wow, I mean, you got all of them just now? That was crazy. This movie is even more rushed than that. Because this movie, what was it? I think we were at the 50-minute mark.
Yeah, 50 minutes.
Yeah, we paused it, because literally he got the third mother box, I think. Either that or the second mother box. I think it was the second mother box. And then we paused it, because you were like, wow, he's already got 2 out of the 3? How far are we into it? And it was 50 minutes, right? So we were less than halfway through the movie. He's already got 2 out of the 3 things he needs, and not long after that, he gets the third one. And you're like, wow, okay. And so it feels very rushed, and that's why I'm excited that the Snyder Cut is 4 hours long. I know that sounds really long, but I can see why it needed to be that long, because there's so much to accomplish in this movie, and it felt so rushed. Because even at the beginning, you were like, oh, so is every scene just going to introduce a new character? You're like, okay, so we had Wonder Woman, and now Aquaman, and then you're like, so is that the whole movie? Because once again, he hasn't seen any of this. He didn't know how many characters were new or introduced and stuff, and so he was just like, so is this the movie? We're just introducing people? But the movie just felt very fast paced. But then it would slow down because there's like the Russian family, and then it was just all a big jumbled mess. And so I can understand why this movie was no good, because it didn't feel like a consistent whole.
Yeah, I guess they could have made the first 2 cubes faster, because then it kind of shifts the focus on like, oh, we need Superman.
Yeah.
But then the whole resurrection thing was also kind of weird.
We'll talk about that when we get to Superman, because we're gonna walk through each of the different characters. Okay. But I don't like how they did the resurrection of Superman at all here, and I hope I've seen the trailers for the Snyder Cut, and it seems like they're doing something similar. So that makes me curious, but we'll talk about that in a second, because the resurrection thing is really weird. But ultimately, if I had to sum up all these problems into one thing, I would say that the issue is that there's a lack of passion, right? Because Zack Snyder, obviously, he had a certain passion about this, or else he wouldn't have made a 4-hour movie, and he wouldn't have invested so much time into all these other movies. And you can tell, like, even if his vision wasn't exactly what the studio wanted, you can at least say he had a vision. Like, he had a goal where what he wanted to achieve.
He wouldn't have gotten fired over it if he cared.
Exactly.
Or if he didn't care.
Yeah, because he could have easily just been like, okay, we'll change things up and botch it down. But he was like, no, like, it needs to be this way.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. Like, no matter what, I can guarantee you that the Snyder Cut's going to be better, just because it's the product of one man's vision and he's passionate about it. I don't even know. I could be wrong here. I believe that he's not even getting paid for this.
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, I think like they put money in to like do like all the work and stuff, but I think he's just getting paid from other stuff. He's just doing this out of passion, like just to finish the film, which is really cool to me. I'm sure he gets money somewhere in there, but I feel like I heard that somewhere. But Zack Snyder, he at least had passion and a vision. Joss Whedon, they just brought him in and just said, hey, do what you did to Marvel movies, like just basically Avengerify this movie. Yeah. And so there's really, in the end, there's no passion, and that's why you don't feel the stakes. That's why you don't feel any of this stuff. It just feels like, okay, this guy just was like, okay, I'm going to throw some jokes in there. And, like all the scenes, that's why you can tell these are Zack Snyder scenes, these are Joss Whedon scenes. Because the Snyder ones, they have that weight and they have that passion where you're like, oh, he's trying to elevate these characters. Yeah. The other ones is just like, okay, we don't care about the characters. We're just going to make a boob joke or something. And you're like, oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely. Because you were talking before about how, like, in the DC... these people, I guess except for Batman, they're basically gods amongst men, but they really did just feel like normal people. Yeah. So basically, the way I would contrast Marvel and DC is that Marvel, it seems like their approach is more everyday people who become godlike, right? Like they're like, so like they're just the everyday man who you can kind of relate to, and they get these powers. Whereas even the most basic DC hero almost seems like they're supposed to be gods among men. Yeah. So even if it's somebody like the Flash, right, who is a human, he's supposed to feel larger than life. Mm-hmm. Whereas, so like that's like the big difference there. And you really don't feel that in this movie. In this movie, it just feels like, okay, it feels much like just the Avengers got together for their battle. Because they even made the Flash basically Spider-Man, and they made Batman basically Iron Man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they had that one interaction where it seems like they're kind of Batman's kind of tutoring Iron Man, just save one man and stuff. Yeah. But then let's talk about Steppenwolf real quick. Yeah. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but you got to talk about Steppenwolf because I just think he's a bad villain. And you mentioned this earlier in the video. He wasn't supposed to be the main villain of this, as we'll see in the Snyder Cut when it comes out in less than a week. Like, Darkseid is the main guy, and Steppenwolf is just supposed to be paving the way for that. But whenever they fired Zack Snyder, or whenever he stepped away, whichever one it was, I know there's, like, debate there. Whenever Zack Snyder left the project, they basically were like, okay, well, we're just going to make Steppenwolf the big bad guy because we don't want to set up anything else. We're just going to resolve the story here and move on. Whereas Zack Snyder, his vision was like Justice League 2, Justice League 3. Like, he was going long term, whereas they're like, okay, we're just going to wrap it up. Steppenwolf's the main bad guy. And his CGI, it's so bad. He just looks like an action figure. He just looks like your everyday run-of-the-mill villain who, I don't know. There's nothing intriguing about him to me.
For some reason, he reminded me of a dude from Infinity War and Endgame, or like Thanos' henchman.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was intentional, or if that's just like another remnant of the whole...
Avengifying it?
Yeah, Avengifying it.
Well, yeah, because in Batman vs. Superman, you see Steppenwolf. And he looks like the Steppenwolf in the Snyder Cut. But in this one, he just looks like, just the dude with a helmet, and just looks really lame. Yeah. And the CGI just looks stupid, and
And they didn't really develop him well anyways, because we were talking about it at the end. We can talk about that later, I guess, but even like his like actual power wasn't really established, like with the axe and whatnot.
Yeah, because I mean we can talk about that right now. Like the at the very end, you know, Superman uses freeze breath on the axe, and then Wonder Woman cuts through it, and then the parademons turn on him. And Sean and I were like, was it ever established that
like a control
that his axe controlled the parademons? Because I didn't ever pick up on that.
You just kind of had to assume, like, oh, it glows. They turn on him. I guess that was either his power or if that was like his title, like his crown or something.
Yeah, to be fair, maybe we were just roasting it too much and we missed that point, but I don't think they ever established it.
If they did, they would have probably established it in the scene with the gods in it.
That's true. That's true. I will say that's a pretty cool scene, but I think it's going to be a lot better than the Snyder Cut because it's actually about Darkseid and not about Steppenwolf. So we'll see. But then one more thing, we're about to address just like each of the main heroes. Yeah. But one more thing I had to address here because I think this is a thing that you notice in the Snyder, in this cut of the movie, is that it's just a lot more like hyper-sexualized. And you see this especially in regards to Wonder Woman. Because, you know, Wonder Woman in general, I mean, she's supposed to be like this female icon, in many ways kind of like a feminist. But even though I think she does it better than a lot of feminists, some feminists go too far. But Wonder Woman, she's supposed to be like this strong, independent woman and stuff. And in her movie, like the Wonder Woman movie was what, 2017? I think it was actually the same year as this, but
probably
came out, I don't remember when it came out, like chronologically. But that movie gives her a lot of respect. It's actually a pretty good movie. I know you haven't seen it, but it's a pretty good movie. And even how she's treated in Batman vs. Superman, pretty good. But in this movie, there's like all these, like, they put her unnecessarily in like these low-cut like shirts and stuff, and then like there's these weird angles where it's like focused on her butt, or like even like at the bank heist scene, like it like has this low angle where it's almost looking up her skirt. And it's just uncomfortable. And I know that there are some allegations and stuff about Joss Whedon and women and stuff. I don't know the full details. Yeah. But you can see that in this movie, where it just seems very gratuitous. And I don't like it, because once again, it's like why? And then you have, of course, the scene where the Flash trips and he just lands like on her chest. And like why? And that's something where that was explicit. Like, people talked about how that was a reshoot. And like, what, like, that's just so weird to me. It's a Marvel gag, right? I mean, it's like, okay, boom, you landed on the chest, ha ha ha. But why would you do that? Like, to me, that's like the clearest example of not honoring the characters. Because you're not treating these characters as like these like amazing people to like be honored. You're treating them like, oh yeah, runaway gag, let's have the Flash land on Wonder Woman's chest and be like, oh, like.
Yeah, you don't get the same feel where it's like they walk in the room and you're like in fear even if they're on your side kind of thing.
Like there's no reverence for the characters. Like they don't show that they care for the characters, so why should we as the audience care? They just treat them like just jokes, and so we want to treat them as jokes too. And that's like the biggest issue, and I don't think Snyder's version will do that. And so that's another big issue. But that being said, let's talk about the 6 characters in the Justice League.
Because they're missing one.
Yeah, they're missing one, and I believe in the Snyder Cut it will be Martian Manhunter. I believe he's going to show up in there briefly or something like that. Because even before Batman vs. Superman came out, when Jason Momoa was cast as Aquaman, they released a press photo of him, and it said, like, Unite the 7. And typically, the Justice League has always been 7 members. But in this movie, there's just 6, which it just feels off, because literally I was showing Sean all the people who were in the Justice League, and every picture, if you just look up like Justice League comics or cartoon or something like that, it'll always just be like 7 main people, usually. I mean, there's usually more people, but on the covers and stuff, it'll be 7. But in this movie, there's 6. And so I think in the Snyder one, there's going to be 7. There's going to be Martian Manhunter. But I'm just going to like bring up the character, and you just tell me what your general opinion about them was. Okay? First off, Aquaman.
Aquaman. I have seen the Aquaman movie.
Oh,
I don't remember when I saw that, but his character actually seemed relatively consistent with that movie. Mm-hmm. Kind of like what's the word? Like, he doesn't really care. Like, he's kind of a
nonchalant.
Yeah. Kind of arrogant, and that one scene was really weird though, with the whole like
lasso of truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one felt out of place, and I can almost guarantee you that was a reshoot scene, just because he just like gets existential and starts philosophizing about life, and
that's not even like
lusting after Wonder Woman.
Yeah, that's not even really continuous with his consistent with his character.
Yeah, that was weird, and that's actually why I brought Aquaman up first, because to me he's probably the one who I imagine watching the Snyder Cut, he'll probably be the most consistent. Like, I imagine that he's probably relatively the same, because I don't think they changed that much about him. It seemed like roughly the same type of guy.
He like walks out drinking a beer,
yeah,
the water and stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
That's the Aquaman I know.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Aquaman I know. Okay, and then next we bring up Flash. What do you think about Flash?
Flash, kind of edgy. Like it seemed like they made him very edgy,
quirky hipster.
Quirky hipster. Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you think? Sean and I were both runners. We actually ran cross country together in high school. What did you think about his running, Sean?
Like a video game character. Actually, no, video game characters have better form than that.
Yeah. Man, it's so bad. Like, I don't know what they did. Like, Ezra Miller, like, he's hired to play the Flash. You would think that if, like, the character's main thing is he can run fast. Like, that is his main thing. Which you would think he would learn how to run.
Which they also did undermine later on. They made it irrelevant.
Oh, yeah, because Superman just catches up with him. And I'm like, really? Like, I mean, I'm a big Superman fan. Look at this. I'm a big Superman fan. If you've watched my videos, you know I'm a big Superman fan. But it totally makes the Flash irrelevant if Superman is as fast as the Flash.
Faster because he catches up and he's just, like,
exactly.
Chilling.
Yeah, so, like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, what is the point of the Flash if he's not faster? Like, then he has nothing to offer. And so that frustrates me, but...
Yeah, most of his dialogue is just kind of like, ha-ha joke.
Brunch, I hate it. It's like... So I'm hoping that they change that. I don't mind if he's a little bit quirky. I don't mind if he's a little bit of the comic relief. I just don't like how far they went with it. Because, like, literally, the stakes are supposed to be so high, and he's constantly busting jokes. That frustrates the heck out of me.
I'm going east.
Yeah, it's like, oh, jeez. Like, it's ridiculous. But then, okay, so there's, we've talked about Aquaman, Flash. Oh, I meant to bring up Cyborg. I actually skipped him. What do you think about Cyborg?
Well, I didn't know he was a DC character, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I don't know how he's, like, supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But he definitely seemed very, like, what's the word? Like, he's not shy, but, like, reserved.
Reserved? Yeah, I can see that.
But I couldn't tell if it was, like, he had just become the Cyborg or, like, anything like... I didn't really know his backstory.
Yeah, they didn't establish a very good chronology with it and everything. It was actually funny, while we were watching it, he was like, oh, you know, I remember a character Cyborg in, like, the Teen Titans and stuff. And I was like, it's the same dude. You're like, oh, okay.
I guess it didn't occur to me that Teen Titans had... Yeah. The Teen Titans wasn't the original thing. They brought characters in.
Yeah. But yeah, Cyborg... This is actually interesting to me. I'm interested to see what they do with Cyborg, because the way that Zack Snyder has described Cyborg in his movie is he says that he is the heart of the movie.
The heart?
Yeah, like he is like the thing that drives the movie. You don't get that impression watching this movie, which to me in and of itself tells you they're going to be two very different movies, because I could care less about Cyborg in this movie. He's kind of just like a side character who just kind of comes in, and I wish, like, he's an intriguing character, right? Like a guy who is now half like robot. Yeah. Like that's even more than half. He's like 90% robot. Like that's a terrifying thing. Like that'd be a scary thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Like how do you handle that? But they don't really address him that much. Like seems like they don't care about him at all. And so I'm very interested to see what they do with him in the Snyder Cut in regards to that. But okay, so now we've done Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg. Next up is Wonder Woman. What do you think about Wonder Woman?
Again, I haven't seen the other Wonder Woman movies, so I don't know how she's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But I will say that first scene was a little bit weird. Yeah. So there's the bomb heist at the very beginning. What'd you think about that scene? Because you did make a comment about it. I don't really know specifically what I think. I just know after I watched it, I wasn't comfortable. It's probably because of those weird angles that Joss Whedon was hitting with, like, up her skirt and everything. It was just weird. It was like, it almost felt like it was just unnecessary. I don't know. I don't really know what the word is. Yeah, it just felt random almost. It was like, the only word I could really think of was, what? Yeah. that was the first comment he made in this movie I was like, okay, he's got to be in the video with me. Because he just looked at me, he was like, that was a weird scene. Because basically it's our introduction to Wonder Woman, and there's these guys, they come into the bank, not a bank, it's a museum or something, they're wanting to bomb it, there's kids and stuff in there on a field trip, and then it like pans to Wonder Woman just like standing on top of the statue. Don't know why she was up there, but she was, I guess, just looking out, and then she goes in there, she's moving super quick, and it's just like an introduction to her, but it just feels weird, it feels rushed, it just keeps going, and I believe that scene is going, like what I've heard is that scene is going to be in the Snyder Cut, but it's more fleshed out and it makes a whole lot more sense in that movie. Yeah, so, that's right, they didn't really give a lot of context to like what was going on. It seemed like it was just like an edgy dude being like, oh, anarchist.
Oh yeah, because he's basically saying like, "Oh, we're sending you back to the Dark Ages," and then like she throws the bomb into the air, and it's like a tiny little bomb.
Because how would that have any connection to the plot?
No idea. I think it was just supposed to show that she's out there saving the day. It was just like an introduction to the character.
Oh, okay.
So it's just showing, oh look, she's like, this is just one of the, like, a daily job for Wonder Woman. I don't know, but it was just kind of weird and strange.
Yeah, they could have done a better job at least connecting it to the plot somehow.
Yeah, but other than that, Wonder Woman, she's like, once again, like I said, hyper-sexualized. It's kind of weird to me because it's a very different character than you get in the other movies. The first Wonder Woman movie, really good. The second one, Wonder Woman 1984, trash movie. We have a review of that on our channel. It's so bad. I really wanted it to be good too. I was looking forward to it. It came out on Christmas. Brianna and I watched it, and I was so disappointed because I was looking forward to it so much. But yeah, this movie, not a good one for Wonder Woman, and neither is it a good movie for Batman. What do you think about Batman in this movie?
Jeez, I'm trying to remember what I thought about him.
Oh, Batman.
Well, okay, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember exactly what I said about him.
Okay.
What did we talk about?
Well, so for me, if I was just going to summarize Batman in this movie, I will just remind you of the scene where Superman backhands him.
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, that is exactly what Joss Whedon did to Batman in this movie. Or maybe a few moments later, when Superman is holding Batman, Lois Lane walks up, and he just nonchalantly throws Batman over his shoulder.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I'm bleeding.
Yeah! Like, that's the worst part. Like, to me, if you want to see... Like, just watch that scene, and you'll know how badly they treated Batman in this movie. I'm not even the biggest Batman fan like a lot of people are. It's like the cool thing nowadays to be a Batman fan, and it's not the cool thing to be a Superman fan. I don't care.
I don't know if it's like an underdog thing or what.
Yeah, I don't know. But the way they treated Batman, they did him dirty in this movie. Like, he's just like on the ground being like, oh yeah, I bleed. And like, he makes all these like jokes it's not consistent with the Batman and Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not consistent with any of it.
They had a weird dynamic with him and Wonder Woman, too.
Yeah.
Which I guess, I don't know if that would go along with hyper-sexualizing, but it's just still weird.
Yeah, it seems like they were just forcing, like, a romance or something. I don't know. It was really weird. The way they treated Batman, I didn't like it. It was just... I don't know. I will say this was funny, though. It was really funny right before all this stuff with him, like, being slapped around by Superman. Everybody's, like, fighting Superman, and then at the end you see Batman, like, running up. He's like... he just runs up.
Because you're like just talking about that?
Yeah, because Sean had brought it up. And it was just... That is funny to me, because inevitably Batman is the underdog when it comes to all these guys, because he is just a man, and as he tells Barry, his superpower is that he's rich. And so, of course, he's going to be running up like... yeah. So, I did enjoy that part, but the rest of it, they just did Batman. I did not like how they did it. Even the opening scene, wherever he, like, gets the thug and, like, he fights the parademon and stuff, it was just weird.
Yeah.
And strange, and I just didn't like it. But that brings us to one final member. Superman. What do you think about Superman in this?
Well, he wasn't in there for half the movie, but...
Yeah.
For one, his CGI was a bit weird.
That lip. To me, that's the only thing I can think about. Like, if you want to ask me my opinion on Superman, I really can't say much, because every time I watch the movie, or the few times I've watched the movie, anytime I've watched clips from the movie, I can't stop looking at that dang lip. It's like,
they didn't really, if you think about it, they didn't really develop his character very much anyways.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because it's supposed to be assumed, because you've, like, watched other movies with him in it, like Man of Steel.
Probably not, because his character is vastly different in this one. Because in the other ones, he's actually been much more dark and brooding. Mm-hmm. Whereas when he shows up in this, after that initial fight, he's kind of like, hi, I'm a big fan of truth and also a big fan of justice.
Oh, yeah, that entrance was a bit weird.
It's like, oh, man.
Oh, cringe.
Yeah, and so, like, I don't know. I'm a big fan of Superman, and I'm a big fan of Henry Cavill's Superman. I know a lot of people aren't, but I really like Henry Cavill's Superman. And I just didn't like how they did it in here. Like, there's all these things where there's certain parts where you can see... what Zack Snyder was going for. Yeah. Because I think the good stuff with Superman, I think that's got to be Zack, because you can usually just tell by the lip, if you just look at it, who was doing what. And like the scene whenever they're fighting, and the Flash is running behind Superman, and then Superman just like looks at him with the side of his eye.
Oh, yeah.
That's an epic scene. I mean, it does kind of, like I said, negate the whole Flash being faster, but in that scene, I'll allow it because it's awesome. And really just how powerful Superman is in that scene, really, really cool. A lot of people don't like it that he's just able to overpower the entire league. I don't mind, because realistically, that's exactly what Superman would be.
He's the leader, and on top of that, those two scenes, the reason the other one is weird is not so much because of that, it's more like the intention of it.
Yeah.
It was like, one was the fight, and you realize like how powerful Superman is. The other one is more of like, oh, the world's at stake. Let's make this really weird contest between the Flash and Superman.
Like the first one actually added stakes because you have this guy who at that point you think it might be an evil Superman, and the Flash is running, and he's the fastest man alive, and then the eyeball just follows him. Like that actually adds weight.
That scene like sticks with you.
Yeah.
And you imagine like the Flash running, and you see him do that. Like that's a really good shot.
Yeah, the Flash is probably used to running at such speeds where everything looks like it's still. But then you just see this guy's eyeball.
It's like a turning point.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, like that's terrifying.
And from like the character of Flash, that would be like a turning point in his character.
Yeah, but the whole Superman thing, I don't like how they treated that. Really, all these characters, to sum it up, all these characters, I don't like how they treated any of them. It just shows that they didn't care about the characters themselves.
And the group,
they just cared about making this movie like Marvel.
Yeah, and the group dynamic wasn't well developed either.
Yeah.
Because it was rushed.
Yeah, it's rushed. Like, they have 2 hours to introduce all these characters, set up a plot line, reach the climax, have this final fight, resolve it, and all this stuff. Like, you can't do all that in 2 hours. You need more build-up. That's why Marvel did all these, like, solo films, and then finally to the Avengers, and then more solo films, and then another Avengers. You can't just do Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, jump into Justice League. Or, I think you actually could do it. You just have to do it in a different way. And I think the Snyder Cut will show us a better way of doing that. But that being said, there are a few things that I just had lingering questions about that I'll just address very briefly. You probably won't have much to say about this because you haven't seen the previous movies.
Yeah.
But 2 things that I just am curious about, and I'm more voicing these because I'm hoping the Snyder Cut answers them. But the first thing is about the resurrection of Superman. Because at the end of Batman vs. Superman, Clark is in the casket, and the final shot of the movie is literally the coffin, and there's dirt on the coffin, and then it begins to slowly rise up, and then it cuts to black. And that would imply that Superman isn't entirely dead, or that something interesting is going on, at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, it's the very last thing you see. So.
Yeah, so it implies, okay, he's coming back, or something's going on. But then in this movie, they have to resurrect him, literally, from being dead.
And that whole thing was weird, too, because they just, dig his grave up, and...
Once again, it felt irreverent, almost. It's like, okay, we just, dug him up, taking his coffin out. Oh, here's his dead body. Let's just lower... I'm like, this is morbid. Once again, Frankenstein's monster, but now it's not the movie, it's Superman who's Frankenstein. Yeah. I don't like that, because it just feels like, don't treat my character like that. I don't know, I didn't, it just felt very messed up to me. I was like, wow, our superheroes are literally grave diggers who are taking dead bodies and putting them in, goop, and I don't know, what if it hadn't worked? They just oh, whoops, I guess we'll go bury him again? I don't know, it was just weird.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, and in the Snyder Cut trailer, I know that I did see this scene again where they're lowering him into the thing, so I have a feeling they're not going to change that. But, so my lingering question here is just, what was the original plan? Because whenever they finished Batman vs. Superman, it seems to imply that they had a different plan for his resurrection.
Yeah.
And so, since Snyder was always very good at doing the whole Jesus imagery with all this, I thought it, whenever I first saw Justice League, I was totally expecting them to dig up the grave and him not be in it.
Yeah.
That's what I was expecting, because I thought it was going to be a Jesus thing, and he was actually somewhere else, recharging or something. I thought that was going to be cool.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, but they didn't do that, and so I don't know what they're planning, and I want to see what the Snyder Cut does. And then the last thing, and this is probably the biggest thing, is the nightmare sequences, which you will know nothing about, because you haven't seen Batman vs. Superman. But in those movies, Batman basically has all these nightmares. Well, in that movie, Batman has all these nightmares where he's basically seeing this world that is basically, it's a post-apocalyptic world where Superman is evil, and, there's, these Omega symbols, which is the symbol for Darkseid, and it seems to imply that Darkseid took over everything.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, the dude whose homeworld's called Apocalypse.
Exactly, yeah. So, basically, it seems to imply, and I'm assuming this is where Justice League is going, the Snyder version, I think it's going to end with them losing. Because in this movie, that's never addressed, and so if you watch Batman vs. Superman, you're like, what the heck are these scenes?
Yeah.
But it seems to imply, and you see it in the trailers a little bit, it seems like they are going to experience that world. And so it seems like this whole movie, I'm going to be interested to see what they do there, because that's a plot point that's totally absent from this version, from the Justice League version of the movie.
Yeah, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, and so I'm interested to see where they go with that. With that being said, this video's already been a little bit longer than I originally intended. That seems to happen with us.
Oh,
yeah, I know. But final thoughts. What did you think about Justice League?
I just had trouble staying interested. I don't watch very many movies and just sit there kind of waiting for it to end. I can usually immerse pretty well in a movie. I'll actually feel it, but this was... Yeah. Even the action scenes, which a movie like this, I would think that if anything it has to write off of is the action scenes. But even the action scenes weren't really that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I really did, like, I would probably agree with you 100% because just trying to analyze why I didn't like the movie, I think it finally clicked in the final, like, action scene, in the final fight. Because I literally turned to Sean and I was like, dude, I'm just waiting for the movie to end. And this is a movie, like, Superman had literally just come back. That is my favorite character in all fiction. Like, I love Superman. He had just come back, and I'm just like, I just want the movie to end. Like, I was bored. I didn't care about it. And that kind of goes back to the whole lack of passion thing I addressed at the beginning. That's my biggest issue with the movie. It just doesn't feel like there's no heart behind it.
It got resolved, and the movie ended like 30 seconds later.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay. And, yeah, so that's the issue there. And there's our opinions on Justice League and why the movie didn't work. And so I'm hoping that a lot of these things will be solved by Zack Snyder's cut. I don't know if it will or not. I have heard that it's better. The word around the block is, that's what I've heard on the grapevine. I've heard it's pretty good. I won't be able to watch it the day it comes out because I actually have class Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's kind of weird how they scheduled classes for me in the middle of spring break. I don't think they understand what the definition of spring break is.
Use that word.
Yeah, use the word. I do not think it means what you think it means. But yeah, so I've got classes Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so I'm actually not going to be able to watch this till Sunday. But I think Brienne and Jonathan are actually going to join me to watch that. And who knows, if Sean's free, maybe he'll come over too and he'll hop in it as well. I don't know.
That'd be good since we did this video.
Yeah, so we're going to watch that. We're probably going to do a reaction thing, but those will come out later, and then we'll release our review first. Okay. But that being said, I am David.
And I am Sean.
And this has been Now Let's Be Honest About Movies. See you later. Also, by the way, please like, subscribe, leave comments, do all that stuff. I forgot to say that, so do that as well. Bye.